Hello, hello, and welcome to the second half of season 5. I can't believe that we're already halfway through the year. My name is Debbie Heiser. I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what's important to them. I feel an urgency to help people let go of past messaging so that they can lead a lit up life. And with that, I want to again welcome you. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity.
Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I am Debbie Heiser. I help entrepreneurs really get clear on what they want their life to look like so that the business is a part of that and is the conduit to creating the life that you want. So I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what's important to them, because we have the life plan. So with that said, I want to jump in today. I teach a lot from the universal laws, and I want to jump into one that tends to sometimes get a bad rap. And this one is called the universal law of sacrifice. And when we think of sacrifice, I want you to take a minute. What are some of the preconceived thoughts or messages that you may have received throughout your life, throughout your upbringing, school, religious connotations, whatever that is about sacrifice? And take just a moment to do that. And for those of you that aren't driving, feel free to make a list on a piece of paper. For those of you driving, please focus on the road. With that being said, take a moment, list those things out. Things like sacrifice means deprivation. Sacrifice means loss. Sacrifice means not only loss, but I'm losing something that I really want. Now, those may ring true for you. They may not ring true for you. But one of the things that I've found is that as we look at the law of sacrifice, and this is such a critical thing, is that the law of sacrifice says it's about giving up something of lesser for something greater. Now, how this might manifest itself in is, how many times have you been asked to do something that you really didn't want to do, and you said yes anyway? That's an example of taking on something of a lesser value that then closes you off from being able to take on the bigger thing, the better thing. And I don't like using those words necessarily because it's a connotation of judgment, but that greater thing for yourself. And so we fill up sometimes with these things to keep busy so that we don't take on the bigger. And sometimes those are messages that we have, that we've gotten about being bigger, about being visible, about what happens to us when we make $500,000, what happens to us when we're running a large company, like who's judging us. Those types of things get in our head and stop us from stepping in and stepping back and saying, here's what I want, here's what I don't want, and what I want requires that I let go of some things. Now, as an example, I love being part of nonprofit boards. When I'm in this big push to build my business and hiring 3 additional contractors and trying to onboard them onto kind of the vision that I have for the business, and then moving systems, right now is not a time where I can give back to my community in that way. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to do it in the future, but for now, that's something that is not getting me closer to that business goal. I'm still giving back. I'm still attending things. I'm still providing financial support, those types of things. But it's about looking at what is it that we need to let go of in order to let come. Otto Scharmer out of MIT talks a lot about theory U, and I teach this at Gonzaga University, around this theory U about we're heading down the U and something is dying. We're needing to let go of something. And I do a nature walk that my mentor, Dr. Jack Horseman, or John Horseman, developed. And it's where you go out into nature and you have a threshold and you cross this threshold. And when you cross the threshold, you are in your spiritual nature walk. And you find a rock and you pick up this rock, and the rock represents everything you need to let go of. and you continue walking in a meditative state, putting into that rock everything that you need to let go of. And once you feel like you're ready to let go of it, you then put the rock somewhere on the path that feels right for you. Now, some people throw it, some people set it down nicely. I've been walking before and the rock just falls out of my hand. So whatever feels natural to you. Now, as you're coming down that you're letting go. So in that nature walk, that's representative in the rock. But here's the thing. You spend some time presencing, and that presencing is slowing down to speed up. You've heard me say that before, slowing down enough to integrate your head, your heart, listening to your body, and listening to your intuition that we've learned to not trust through time. So, oh my gosh, there is a bug crawling across behind me in this video. Sorry, I got a little distracted there. But the law of sacrifice is about letting go. But then in that presencing, we're looking at and asking for what's coming, because nature abhors a vacuum. And whatever we have let go of, we are now creating space, and we want to be mindful about what gets into that space. Because here's the deal. We let go of things, but then we say yes to things that we don't really want to say yes to. And that fills up that space. And so it's really important that then the second half of this nature walk is what happens is then you find a piece of wood. So once you've left the rock, you've let go of what you need to let go of, then what you're doing is you're picking up a piece of wood. And when you pick up that piece of wood, that stands for the tree of life. And that piece of wood, you're concentrating on letting come. What's coming into this space? What is the purposeful thing that is about to happen or about to come into your life or your business or whatever it is that you're focused on? What's coming, and listening to that. And once you feel like you've got what's coming, you've gotten some ideas, you're being pulled forward, right? Like it's this pull in you about what's coming. Then you lay the piece of wood down on the path, throw out whatever feels right for you, and you leave that piece of wood on the path. And then you create another line that is the threshold of you stepping out of your nature walk. And then go back and furiously take some notes. That's what I typically do. I take my journal with me in the car. And so what I'm recommending to you is not only to do this nature walk, but think about the law of sacrifice and what you need to let go of. Now, it might be a system that you need to let go of in your business. It might be a relationship that you're not serving them, they're not serving you anymore. And those are tough. Those are tougher. But usually when we get to that point, we get into, like we hang on for a lot longer, and it's pretty obvious. It might be a really toxic relationship too. So like, as you're thinking about what you need to let go of on this nature walk, some of those things are going to come to you. And here's the challenge. The challenge is a lot of times we're thinking from our present place. We're thinking from the subconscious messages that we've had in our minds. And sometimes we're not willing, or we get scared to let something go because of what might be coming. Sometimes I see people afraid of success, or it might be that we're afraid something else is going to happen when we let go. And I equate it a little bit to hermit crabs. I haven't thought of a better one. Hermit crabs stay in their shell until the shell is too small. Now, some of us feel the uncomfortability. We move out of that shell and we're in our most vulnerable place. And this is when that nature abhors a vacuum, right? And we're in that vulnerable place looking for this bigger shell, and we crawl into this bigger shell. And what happens is sometimes the people, the places, the things that we've gotten ourselves involved in try to pull us back because it's comfortable. And maybe they're not used to seeing us in this different way. And so it's sometimes this dichotomy of tension as you're moving towards that. And the law of sacrifice, when we think about emotion in this, sometimes there is a loss. Sometimes it's the loss of, like, I'll give an example. I loved being on our hospital foundation board. It was time for me to rotate off and let that go for a while. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to go back to it. I've had some desires recently to go back to that. But at the time, it was not only the law of sacrifice for me, but the law of sacrifice to let go, to let other people step up and step into different roles. So we got to get really comfortable with understanding what's there. Now, it could be a system I mentioned in your business. It could be that law of sacrifice not only is a relationship, it could be as simple as getting rid of, how many of you keep makeup or keep mine socks? For some reason, I have probably 100 pairs of socks. I don't know why that is. And as a matter of fact, in my realm of trying to get rid of 50% of what I own, I need to get rid of some of those socks. And this whole idea of getting rid of 50% of what I own, because I don't use all of it. And that's part of the law of sacrifice too, is letting go of those things that you don't use anymore. But where I was going with this is think about some of those things like socks, makeup, hair products that you have a little bit left and you think, oh, I'm going to turn the cap over and like get the rest of it out. It's not about being wasteful, but it's about realizing that it's time to let those things go. So I want to point out to you too, in this law of sacrifice, the really interesting thing about this is that we're never asked to give up the greater for the lesser. You know, for me, it's God. For you, it may be universe, Buddha, whatever it is for you, spirit. Use what word works for you. But I know that the spirit is not asking me to give up the greater for the lesser. Now, there are times that we may be stepping into things that are greater for the common good. But I want you to think about that, because that's a big piece. And what happens here in the law of sacrifice is that we typically have a hard time letting go because we don't trust ourselves. We've been taught not to trust ourselves. And you've heard me talk about this before, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. And if you haven't, feel free to go back because I talk about this a lot. But it also allows us to build trust in ourselves because we can let go of the lesser and we realize there's more than we could possibly even imagine. Now, some of you might be afraid of that. And what's coming? What is that thing that's coming? And is it more? Because then we get wound up in some of our subconscious messaging that, oh, if I create this big business, that means I'm going to be working all of the time. Well, that's false. It just is. I know it is. I've been experiencing that. And then it's about having this evidence bank to show that some of the messages that we have, right? Like you have to work really hard to make money. Well, I find it's actually easier to make a lot of money than it is a little money. That seems counterintuitive, but we let go of some of these thoughts and sacrifice some of these thoughts to go into the bigger. And so sometimes what happens is we're sacrificing something to move into something bigger, and we realize there's layers. And we have to let go of some of the thoughts. We have to let go of some of the limiting beliefs. We have to let go of potentially some of the masks that we've been hiding behind. So the law of sacrifice can be, it's simple, but yet can be complex in the realm that sometimes there are layers to this. So I would invite you to look at this and think about what may be something in my life that is an irritant to me that maybe I complain about, or I'm frustrated about, or I'm tolerating in my own life of myself. And that might show you an area that you need to let go of. Now, an important thing about this is I want you to understand that sacrifice is never deprivation. Sacrifice means we're letting go of something to receive, and we have to be open to receiving the gifts and the blessings and what's coming our way. I see a lot of people close off and not accept what's there. The last thing I want you to do is think about who are the people in your life that uplift you, that provide this opportunity to look at and step into the more, your more life directive. What is your environment like? I mentioned getting rid of 50% of what I own. That's part of the environment. What am I doing to keep myself in this forward movement of moving into my more life directive and sacrificing? And sometimes those are behaviors that maybe not being so healthy, or behaviors of I don't know, I was thinking about this earlier. I was listening to a book about health and how it talked about how we've made such a huge impact on lung cancer, or lung diseases because of, and I think it was heart disease too, because of people stopping smoking, and that sacrifice of letting go for the longer term as well. So that environment, what is your environment doing to help lift you up? And the last is, what resources are out there for you to be able to step into that and be able to let go of those things that are holding you back. And please feel free to use me as a resource and sign up. You can go out to my website. It's down in the show notes, and sign up for a free clarity call, because it's really too, when we think about the law of sacrifice, and this is what I love about that nature walk, is it brings clarity. We have to have clarity. Now, sometimes in that presencing stage, we're not sure what exactly is going to come out of it. And so part of that's that law of gestation and allowing some of that gestation period, but not sticking in gestation as an excuse. Sometimes we drag our heels and use that universal law as an excuse. So when we think about the law of sacrifice, just remember, sacrifice is not deprivation. Look at and uncover some of the internal messages that you might have received from growing up, from different things that you've heard or listened to. We also live in a world of scarcity. I mean, anything on sale is scarcity mindset. And so sometimes that scarcity plays into then our thinking about the law of sacrifice. If I give up this client because it's not my ideal client, and I want to take them on because I'm afraid and I want money, because I need to pay my bills and blah, blah, blah. Hopefully you hear the energy around that, versus I'm not the right person for this person. I can't serve them in the way that they're needing to be served. So I can refer them to someone else and not just leave them high and dry. But that's what I mean. When we go into it with a frenetic energy because of scarcity, because we're afraid to let go, that comes across completely differently than if I'm looking at how can I show up in service to people, and this just doesn't fit. And that means that there's a different person out there that needs to work with me or wants to work with me. So hopefully this is kind of landing for you. Please sign up. I'd love to have a deeper conversation about this. And also remember that sometimes the law of sacrifice, you do go through the 5 stages of grief, because there is sometimes a loss of something, whether it's leaving a W-2 job, whether it's moving into something that's different, that you're moving from a team, whatever that may be. There is sometimes a loss that we need to deal with, but then that empowers you to move forward. So with that, it's a wrap, folks. We'll talk to you next week, and thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for listening. The song Ride is co-written and sung by Miss Jackie Wilson and her collaborators Tyler Banks, David DJ Lee, and Chris Renee. And a huge shout out to them for allowing us to use this perfect song. Everyone have a fabulous week, and I'll talk to you next week.